Welcome to Season 4 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach who guides overwhelmed teachers through a 5-step process out of education and into a life they love. In this season, we'll be meeting experts from many different sectors who help people to change careers, as well as a few ex-teachers who forged a pathway into something new. I'm sure it won't surprise you to learn that what keeps people in teaching when they'd rather leave is often financial pressure. That's why today's show is sponsored by Chris Carlin, financial planner and mortgage broker from Master Your Money Now. Chris can help you sort out your cash flow, pay down debt, and plan your financially strategic exit from teaching, making sure you take good care of everything you've worked so hard for. Chris understands personal insurance cover and can help you to make a successful claim so you don't have to deal with the insurance company yourself, a huge relief if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed by money concerns. Chris is not about taking risks. He's careful to help you keep your money safe, and his fees are very reasonable. He can even help you plan for retirement. Chris cares for the caring professions, teachers and nurses, helping you to shore up your financial resources so that you'll be in a good position to leave when you're ready. Go to masteryourmoneynow.com.au to book a free 30-minute chat with Chris Carlin and master your money now. Episode 3. Hi everyone and welcome to the show, and on today's show I'm very pleased to be interviewing Yvonne Kelly from Glow Up Careers. Hi Yvonne, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Yvonne, you're actually working in a similar space to what I am, working with and in career coaching, helping people find new jobs, and yet you have a really interesting positive spin on what you do. Could you just share a little bit about that with us today?
Yeah, sure. So my career has been working in recruitment for most of my career life, and love helping people find jobs. And 2 years ago, I launched a social enterprise called Glow Up Careers, which is around career coaching from everyone from kind of school leaver up to CEO. But part of what we do is we give back through a lot of coaching for people from diverse backgrounds and mainly refugees and new migrants. So we work with community organizations who are working and supporting people from refugee and new migrant backgrounds who are struggling to find jobs, and we help them match them with a coach and help them through a program that supports them to help them find mostly their first job in Australia.
Fantastic. And so what are the kind of, when these people come, I know they often have issues around their visa or being allowed to work. Do you find you have to help people sort that out as well?
Yeah, so we tend to find that there's lots of amazing community organizations that have job-ready programs. A lot of the refugees actually do have work visas, so they have the right to work. They have a lot of different type of visas. Education is which is educating what the different visa types that they have. But most of them are available and they have work rights in Australia.
Right. Okay. So then when you start working, or say you're the coach, if you start working with them, what are the kind of issues that they're facing?
Yeah, so it's interesting. A lot of the issues that the refugees and new migrants face are people that, so when I was recruiting, and I still recruit, so I still do some recruitment, I was finding a lot of people coming to me that had entered the job market or have been on the job market for a long time, and we're finding it very overwhelming. There's so much technology now in the job search process, and so for the refugees and new migrants, sometimes that's more overwhelming for them. So they don't know the job market here, they don't know the processes and how it works. So if we can explain that clearly, we can really help them kind of find a clear path to how they can get their resume through that technology. That's sometimes that first point where you have to put your resume onto a job board, or it goes into an applicant tracking system. So how that machine can pick up the keywords and a human to actually read the resume. So that's the biggest hurdle for a lot of people that we see in the job market, and more so for refugees and new migrants.
Okay, so let's just segue onto that, because I think that's a really crucial topic for my listeners as well, which is teachers who are trying to get out of teaching and they're looking to move into something new, perhaps a career in technology, or they want to do something in training often, or some kind of consultancy work. And I had a conversation just on LinkedIn this morning with someone who I had a brief chat to a few weeks ago, and he wants to work in the sustainability space. And I just saw someone had posted a job ad in LinkedIn, as a post, and I just thought, oh my gosh, that would be perfect for this guy. And I just sent him a message and the link. What's the kind of, but he's got a teacher resume right now, or he probably doesn't even have a resume right now. What are the sorts of things he would need to do to move out of education and like a teaching role in a school into something like Sustainability Victoria?
Yeah. So a lot of the work that we do is research. So really understanding the industry that you want to go into. So I'd be advising him to really research the sustainability jobs. So understanding what the roles are, really digging into what the criteria are, but then also understanding who he might be competing against for those roles. And that's where LinkedIn is great. You can actually look at whole teams and divisions, depending on what area he wants to go into and how many of those employees are actually on LinkedIn. So I know some government sectors, LinkedIn isn't really popular and it's growing now. But whatever information, a lot of in relation to government, and if it be local council, they often have a lot of the information on their website around the organizational structure and the number of people in the teams. So really as much research as you can do, and it is ideal to speak to people who work in those industries already and really understand what the career paths are to get in there. So if he can reach out to some of the hiring managers, maybe in the councils, or some recruiters that recruit in that space, just to get an understanding of, is there an educational gap? Like, does he need to do study before he can get a job? He may not need to, but he wants to be able to find out all of those answers to those unknown questions. And then once you've got a clear idea, especially from a resume perspective, it's really about putting yourself in the mindset of the hiring manager and thinking, what does this person, this candidate bring to the job? What are those transferable skills that are going to be appealing from a teaching perspective that will transition into a sustainability role? So, and a lot of that is looking at what are the duties and responsibilities in the job ad, and then ultimately the job description. And then how can you match that back to teaching in relation to, so if it's a training type of role, well, then those responsibilities often match quite well. It's just about making sure that you're using the language that they use in sustainability as opposed to teaching, because some of the words could be different. And that's where the keywords come in.
And so just on that, often I would suggest to people that, when there's a job posted, there'll often be a contact person. Are they a good person to speak to before you make the application? And what's the
I think once you've done your research.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, so if you've done your research beforehand and you know that because obviously the risk of ringing that person is if you are not prepared and they feel like you don't know what you're talking about, they may, you may not come top of the list. What you want to do is definitely, think about ringing that person, but be super prepared. So have questions that are very questions that are really thought out. And these people are really busy, so you want to kind of make sure that you're not wasting their time. So obviously not asking questions that the information is already available in the ad. So you want to make sure that you're making a compelling case, because it's a touch point often as a recruiter, if somebody rings me first and they're really nice and they have great experience, once they send the resume through, I'll go in and find them and I'll go, brilliant. I know this person sounds good. Let's book them in straight away for an interview.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's absolutely.
So get you over that first hurdle, maybe at least get you in the room with the interviewer. Nice. And in terms of preparation, are you talking about things like you said, look at who else is working for that organization or that company, and maybe some of the, like, you know how on LinkedIn that's got the people have endorsed them for particular skills? Is that the kind of thing you should be looking for?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn, as much as you can find out about working with a lot of people to help them put more on LinkedIn and kind of share a bit of their personality, the more that you can find about the hiring manager or the recruiter, obviously the more you can relate to them and be personable. So that's the first thing, is that you've got to be kind of likable and connect in that first instance. So the more you can find out on LinkedIn. So there's lots of different things. I love to look at their activity. So what they're liking and commenting, that gives you a good idea as to the type of person they are. On their headline and the introduction on the LinkedIn, they might talk about, we found a common connection that we both have interest in supporting refugees and new migrants. So that might be something that they've volunteered. Sometimes people talk about sport if they're liking posts that are about sport. You can start to kind of gauge things where you can find that kind of common interest, and the more common interest you find, then that connection. So it's just the same as any human to human connection point. If you can find that, then it's much easier. And as I said, especially if you have a conversation and they know that you've actually put a lot of effort and thought into your research, and that you've spoken to people in the industry, and maybe you know about some projects they're doing, maybe you know about some awards they've won, the deeper that you can kind of dig to do your research, the more compelling it will be to show how passionate you are to actually work there.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love that advice. Okay, so you've done that little bit of, I guess, market research in a sense, and now it's time to write the cover letter and the resume. What are the things that a recruiter is looking for when they get to that level?
Yeah, so the first thing is they want to know that you've read the ad. So a lot of the work we do is actually showing people how to read the job ad. So really making sure that you're understanding who they are, location. So some simple things that you've thought about that you can get there, that it's going to be easily accessible for you. You've thought about that. You've got a reason for wanting to work with that organization. So there's got to be kind of a passion or interest level. Right. So all of those things that you put into the cover letter. But the main thing in the cover letter is really that you're meeting the criteria that they're asking for, so that you're actually ticking the box. So yeah, we usually suggest kind of, if they've got 5 criteria, you should be ticking at least 3 to 5 of those in order to apply, because that's really the crux of what they're looking for. Yeah. And then in the resume, again, just making sure that your resume aligns to the responsibilities as to what they're looking for. So yeah, making sure that you're that you're reading, understanding what they want, and then kind of responding back to them in a way that they've asked you to. So if they've asked you for a cover letter that's 1 page, just make sure you keep it to 1 page. Yeah. And we usually recommend 2 to 4 pages for your resume, depending on, again, what they ask. In Australia, they don't tend to ask. I know in the US they often ask for a 1-page resume. Here, 2 to 4 pages is good.
Acceptable. Yeah. Okay. And I know
telling a story, I think.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
So I was going to say that, if you're transitioning from teaching, telling a story in your resume as to why you've done that and what you're passionate about now. So going back to that sustainability, where did that interest spark from? And maybe the guy you're talking about has done some volunteering in that space, or maybe he just does things at home that are sustainable, or maybe he lives a sustainable life. So any of those stories that he can put across in his resume to show that enthusiasm and the level of interest is important.
Yeah, okay. And so then once that's all written and it's, polished, how do you know that it's going to get through the computer system that, it's looking for keywords and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So again, a lot of the work that we do is around that keyword optimization to make sure that you've researched the marketplace and understand the keywords that are available. And we do that in a very hands-on way with the people that we coach. And then it's just really kind of trialing that and tweaking. So sending some applications and tracking your tracking your success. And you can also do that on LinkedIn. If it's a role that maybe you've seen advertised on LinkedIn, you can actually track on LinkedIn like how many people are viewing your profile and keep track of your success, and then start to tweak. If you're not getting the results that you want, then there may be keywords that are missing. So it's not a kind of set and forget process, unfortunately. It is something that you've kind of constantly got to be working on to make sure that you are getting that success. And unfortunately, not, a lot of companies don't respond. The ones that do, often you don't get an understanding of why you're not successful. So it is tricky. It's you've just got to really keep positive, I think, through that process.
And so would it be something like, I imagine, and this is what I have done in the past, is to use the words that they've used in the actual job ad as part of the response. Are there other strategies that people should be using?
Yes, I think the more that you can get, as I said, put yourself in their shoes and understand what their motivation is, and connect. It's that human to human connection. So obviously you've got to get it through the technology first, because there may not be human intervention to look at your resume in that first point. But once you've got through that, you've got to connect with the person. So as a recruiter, like I love when I look at I remember really clearly, I got this resume that was beautifully laid out. It was really well written. I knew that the person had read my job ad, and they ticked all the boxes. It was just a really nice resume. And then when I opened the cover letter, I just got really excited because it was very personalized, and it really, was responding to exactly what I'd asked for. And then when I jumped onto LinkedIn, her LinkedIn profile was, again, just beautifully, it all followed suit. So when recruiters see any red flags, if there's spelling mistakes or there's you feel, oh, this cover letter doesn't really connect to the resume. And then if you go onto LinkedIn, often some of the dates might be out. Any red flags put seeds of doubt in a recruiter's mind. So you want to alleviate any of that doubt and just make sure that you're in that top position to get that job.
Right. So even things like what year you started your degree, for instance, that kind of information, if there's a disparity between that and what's on your LinkedIn profile, that can be a red flag. Wow.
Yeah.
And
I'm really, sorry, I'm really big on that attention to detail. So for me, and I know for a lot of the recruiters in because depending if it's a competitive role, you might have 50, 100 resumes. It depends how many. At the moment, the market is more candidate short, so it's a good time to be looking because there's a lot less candidates for each role. And I had a meeting with my recruitment colleagues today, and they said it's getting, even some of the jobs are only getting kind of 5 to 10 responses, where if last year, the year before, they might have been getting 50 to 100.
Why is that? That seems strange.
Yes, I think because our borders have been closed for a long time now, there's not new talent that are coming in, and some people are staying put for that security reason. And obviously, even our borders internally, we would have had a lot of talent that was moving across states. So a lot of that movement isn't happening now, and it's creating a lot of job shortages in different areas.
Okay. And where are the shortages? Maybe that's where teachers should be going.
Yeah, they're all across the board. So I did ask that question. Our recruitment network, I sit on the US board of a global recruitment network, and we had a catch up with our recruitment owners today. We've got about 200 in Australia, New Zealand, and they were saying that it's across all job roles and industries. So it's not it's kind of across the board, and it's starting even at entry level type of positions. So people are,
and it's related to the fact that people just aren't moving around as much. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, Yes, yes. There's just not as many people that are moving, and it is a lot to do with, especially for some of those more entry level roles, they would have got a lot of people like backpackers and people from overseas that would have come over here, and obviously none of that. And in our recruitment network, we're always attracting talent, even from New Zealand, bringing them across here, vice versa, bringing people from the UK and Ireland come over. All the sponsorship visas, none of that is happening anymore. So it's made the talent pool very, very small.
Yeah, wow. So in a way, there's opportunities there, though, because of that.
There's lots of opportunities. Yeah.
Wow.
And employers are starting to open their thinking, because they have to now, to look at different pathways to hiring. So I think for teachers, it is a really good time to start thinking about, if you've had an idea in the back of your mind of maybe you want to make a move, well then, now is a good time, because organizations are having to be more open to looking at a diverse group of people.
Right. And do you find that, like, a lot of my the people in the Get Out of Teaching Facebook group are like in their 40s, 50s, even a few in the 60s. So they're coming to this career change often quite late in their own career. So they might have taught for 15, 20 or even 25 years. And now they're looking for something else to see them out till their last 15 or 20 years before retirement. Employers open to an older workforce, do you think?
So the employers that I'm dealing with and talking to are much more open to diversity and inclusion, but I think Australia still has a long way to go. So unfortunately, there is still ageism in the marketplace, and we have a number of coaches at Glow Up who focus on supporting those who are over 50, and it is difficult. I can't say it's always easy, but what I would say is that due to these candidate shortages, it's kind of forcing these companies to start to reassess and really think, are they truly diverse and open? And I think as a teacher, you want to find an organization, we work a lot based on values. So understanding what your values are, but what the company values are, and that they align. So if you've got an organization that's really going to value the experience and who you are, they're the companies that you want to be applying for, rather than ones that are not going to. And there are Glassdoor is a website. Employees actually rate the companies that they work for. I know Seek has the same function. So you have to take it a little bit with a pinch of salt, though, because people can kind of complain on these sites, but right. Sometimes it can give you an overall picture. Or if you're looking on LinkedIn at an organization and say team, you'd be able to gauge what the age group, what the age group or the diversity in that team is. So that will usually give you an indication of what their kind of hiring practices are. So as I said, the more research that you can do, you'll know which organizations will be more open to valuing that level of experience. Because for me, I've always been open to hiring people who've had more experience, because there's great value from that, and longevity, and there's I just think it's a no-brainer. But unfortunately, not all organizations in Australia feel that way. So there is still, similar to the refugees that we work with, there still is racism in hiring, and there still is ageism that's out there as well. But there are some good organizations that are working towards helping to change that. Yeah. And change those biases.
With the racism element, is it racism, or is it the language skills? Like, what's the actual issue, do you think?
We still see racism happening, that they would prefer some organizations would prefer to take Anglos who have good. So a lot of the refugees that we work with have great communication skills. They've kind of studied English while they're here. They've gone through job ready programs. A lot of them have done volunteering, and so look, I think it's just because a lot of companies have hired in a certain way, often it's hard to change their thinking and they don't realize that they've got these biases. Yeah. So there is a lot of work. I'm a member of the Australian HR Institute. I was at their diversity and inclusion conference in Sydney before lockdown, and it was really interesting to see a lot of senior HR managers there that really are open to their diversity and inclusion policies, and they want to learn how they can invite more diverse groups of people, and that does include that over 50s group. So there was a stand there for a company that supports people who are over 50 to get into the workplace. So so there is a lot of work being done, but it's a whole education piece, and I think it's just not that they are blatantly wanting to be racist or ageist, but these companies have just recruited in one way and they've got kind of blinkers on, right. And they haven't really, they've been biased in their recruitment process. And there's a lot of technology now that can remove bias from the advertising process. There's a great tool from the UK that's just come onto the marketplace where companies can put their job ad through and it brings up to show just how biased that job ad is.
Wow, that's a great service.
Yeah. So often job ads will exclude people without really realizing based on the language that they're using. Yeah. So there's a lot of education in the market, and especially in the kind of HR and talent space, to educate the recruiters and talent teams that bias is real, and they need to be thinking more about that inclusivity and how they can bring people in from different. Right.
So if you say we're after a mature-minded person, is that code? That's code for older? Like
yeah. Yeah, so it's hard because you can't be biased in either direction. So it is a really tricky one, because then it can be tricky to, I know a lot of companies are trying to balance out their gender as well, but you can't be biased on your ads to say we only want females for this job. So it's a really tricky balance.
That's hard, isn't it? Because they're trying to create a balance, but they actually they can't be selective. That is a bit of a catch-22 there, isn't it, for organisations? Yeah. So I know there are some recruiters that have come onto the marketplace that are looking in niching in over 50s. There's recruiters now that look at one of the recruiters in our network. She's Indigenous herself and she recruits a lot of in the Indigenous space. So there are different recruiters and groups that are really helping support those different kind of diverse groups to help, as I said, a lot of this education process and change. And I know Sydney Uni is doing a lot of research, especially around refugees, to educate organisations about what we talked at the beginning around the visas, and making sure that they know that it is quite a simple process, and that those barriers aren't necessary barriers to hiring, because these refugees can work. So I'm overcoming some of that kind of misconception in the marketplace, and I think it's the same for the older workforce. Okay, and that research is coming out of Sydney University, you said?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, that's a good one to keep an eye out for. Okay, so I'm just going to get a little bit more personal with you now. I noticed in your background, and for the YouTube viewers, you'll be able to see it, but for the podcast listeners, Yvonne has a massive bookshelf. It looks like it's almost floor to ceiling, that's just jumbled up with books and CDs, and it looks very exciting. It made me want to, I wish I was in the same room and not on Zoom. What are you reading at the moment, Yvonne?
Yeah, so I just love reading. So a lot of the work, I've just started to collaborate with a company called Bambuda, and they're very much into kindness. And there's a Facebook group called The Kindness Pandemic, and it shares little stories of people that do kind things, and just small things every day. And that's something that I'm a big advocate for. So a friend of mine for my birthday bought me this book, Heroes Next Door, which is small stories of people that live next door to you, or just day-to-day people that have done really nice, kind gestures. So I'm really liking that. I just think we can all do small things to make a big difference. So that's one that I'm reading. And Yeah, I'm just about to start this one with Oprah Winfrey, which is called What Happened to You? So conversations on trauma, resilience and healing. So I know a lot of people are going through a lot of having to be resilient over the last year and a half. And I think with me, most of my family are in Ireland and in Europe. So I haven't seen them in a long time. And, you know, I know there's a lot of people in a similar position in Australia. So, yeah, doing some reading around how to kind of be resilient and, get through this strange time we're all going through.
So for the listeners, Yvonne's back in lockdown, or you haven't had much lockdown up there in Sydney, but we certainly know what it's like in Melbourne. But so we're trying hard to not just gloat a little bit, but also we're really conscious what a massive impact it has on the whole country and the economy, and you know it's the broader picture, not just our own personal, you know, wagging our fingers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like that kind of goes back to the job search as well, because now a lot of the job interviews are happening online, which was never the case before. So people are having to prepare for a video interview where maybe that's not kind of something that they've been comfortable in doing before.
Yeah. I've even heard of some places asking, instead of, you might send your resume, but you send a little talk, like a video recorded talk, instead of a cover letter, or as a sort of like a, you know, a talking cover letter, which
that can be really uncomfortable.
Sorry?
That can be really uncomfortable for people to,
I had one client who did 3 recordings of the same thing to try and, you know, in her car, because it was the only place she could do it where it was quiet and, you know, kind of good reception and all the rest of it, because she just was so nervous about it. She left it to the last minute, and so she had to sort of pull over and do this recording to send off the application. But that can be quite intimidating, I think, especially when you're maybe not a confident speaker, or you feel like it's, you know, you're okay in front of a classroom maybe of children, but speaking to peers on a video recording where it's going to be there forever, that can be quite intimidating. Yeah. Okay. So what are some things?
It's comfortable, but
sorry, say that again.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just saying, I think it is a bit uncomfortable for people if they haven't done it before. And for some reason, video, people feel a little bit more intimidated than they do when they're standing in front of a group of people face to face. So I agree with you. I think just practice is the best thing, is just get your phone and just practice it over and over. And having a script can be good too, so that you can learn that and just be really comfortable with your story as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some nice tips there. You've said a couple of times, you mentioned the word story. So it's really important to weave a story into your application, so that there's this warmth and humanity that comes through, but also to show, like to demonstrate the skill or the experience that you've had. So, Yvonne, as we wrap up our interview today, I'm just going to ask you one further question. What's your favourite song?
My favorite song is Sail Away by David Gray.
Oh, I know Sail Away, like the Enya. There's an Enya song called
so this is it's similar. This is David Gray from the UK. So it's just a lovely, myself and my husband, we like sailing, and I love the water is my happy place. So that's my favorite song.
And is it or the tune, like what is it about it, the song, that you really like?
I just love the melody, and I love it brings back a lot of really nice memories. So for me, I think music always relates to time and place, and it brings back some great summer holiday memories and out in the boat and a freedom. So we both love to be out in the water and sailing, and just the freedom that gives you. And
awesome. Yvonne, look, thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today. I think it's been really valuable. You've opened up, shone a spotlight on so many aspects of the hiring process that I think are hidden to most people. Like your average job applicant has no idea about what's going on in the background, and just those tips about looking at who else is applying for the jobs and looking at and to see if anyone's looking at your profile and all those things have been really amazingly helpful. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. I really enjoyed speaking with you today. A big shout out to all the teachers.
Oh, sorry. Go on. Say that. You can keep going.
Oh, no, I was just going to say a big shout out to all the teachers out there for the amazing work that you do, especially during the last year and a half. So thank you.
Oh, I'm sure that listeners will be very grateful for that little, ego boost. Thank you so much. If this is the kind of conversation you'd like to have, here are some ways we can make that happen. You can connect with me via my website, larksong.com.au, or join the Get Out of Teaching Facebook group, or send me a message. You don't need to stay stuck in a job that makes you miserable. I offer a free 10-minute triage call to people who are ready to explore possibilities for the future. So let's have a chat. You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast. Please share it with your teacher buddies, and for show notes and other resources, visit larksong.com.au/podcast.